Idiot neighbor eavesdrops and I win. My neighbor is an idiot and we have been having issues with her from the start. 6 hours of relentless dog barking 4 days a week for years, yelling at me for stealing water flowing downhill, dead rabbits on the doorstep, the usual property line arguments, emptying her toxic hot tub onto our property, lying by the hedges to spy on us, parties, noise, etc. ad nauseum. Just run-of-the-mill bad neighbor stuff. Eventually, we built a giant fence and it has kept the bullcrap to a minimum. Both yards have plenty of mature trees and we have 3 maples over 150 years old and a nearly 100-year-old birch, a 12-foot cedar hedge, and add to that the giant fence, and daylight is at a minimum in our backyard in the summer. The idiot neighbor had 2-century-old trees and a very mature mulberry tree that hung over the fence in the only area that enjoys direct sunlight. Now, this part is entirely our fault. One spring, we built a patio there with light gray stone. The mulberry tree has dark purple fruit, and hers is extremely prolific. The week construction was finished was the week berries ripened and began dropping in the slightest breeze. Sitting out there for any length of time, and you would be pelted with berries, leaving purple stains like you were shot with paintballs. And a sweeping path was the only way not to step on them. If this only lasted for a few weeks, it would be tolerable, but mulberries are in season all summer. The amount of birds that feasted on the fruit and promptly deposited bright purple bird poop on everything we owned outside was unbelievable. Purple bird poop drip dried everywhere on the patio and beyond, and we started putting tarps over the patio to collect the bird dung coated berries and emptied it into a bucket every time we wanted to use our patio. Remembering our neighbor's penchant for eavesdropping, I began to talk about mulberry wine, about how good my mulberry wine was and how this year's bumper crop of mulberries was going to make so much wine, and how we were going to go on vacation with all the money I was making from selling my mulberry moonshine. I got visitors to join in on the act, claiming they could not wait for their allotment of my fabulous mulberry wine and offering bribes to be moved up the list. I do not make mulberry wine, never have, and would not start with mulberry bird poop wine. One rainy early summer night, I heard and felt a tremendous crash. I ran into the backyard and the largest limb from the mulberry tree was lying in my backyard. A chainsaw was sputtering on the other side of my giant fence, and the mulberry tree was coming down at night in a rainstorm. Further evidence of her idiocy. There was a bit of yelling back and forth through the fence, me about her being a dangerous moron, and her to me about having a nice vacation without having mulberry wine to sell. She continued to cut down the whole tree instead of just the limbs hanging over our property. I laughed myself into the house, not quite believing my ruse worked so well, and revenge was finally mine, but the poor tree died needlessly. Barely a month later, a vicious storm blew through our area, splitting one of her mature trees in half and damaging the other so badly it had to be removed. And now the idiot has no trees, but all mine are still standing. I just don't know why you would cut down a 100-year-old tree because, you know, your neighbor maybe is getting some of the berries that fall onto his lawn. Even if you do hate your neighbor, the idea that he's picking up discarded fruit and making wine, little silly. Enough to go on vacation, even sillier. But to be so mad about it that you go like anti-team tree, spit in Mr. Beast's face and start chopping down 150-year-old trees on your property, she probably just knocked down her property value by like $20,000 with this one swift trick, how to go broke in seconds. Alright, what's up guys, it's your boy Scrub here. Today we're going to be going over r/petty revenge, which is a pretty dang good subreddit if I do get to say so myself. So yeah, without further ado, let's go and press the like button, otherwise someone's going to chop down your tree, and that's not cool. Enjoy having no internet. Back when I was in uni in the early aughts, net access wasn't as ubiquitous as it is now. In my 3rd year, my university finally granted us net access in the dorms, and unfortunately, they were only providing 1 connection per room, even though every room had 2 students. Since my roommate had a more powerful computer, I asked them to put the network jack on his side of the room. I figured that since we were great buds, I'd just mooch off of him when I needed to. Fast forward a month or 2 later, and my best bud does a complete 180 180 and turns into a raging douchebag. I found out years later he was having some issues at the time with his girlfriend and was lashing out at me, and we sorted it out as adults and we're back to being friends now. But at the time, it was hell. I couldn't spend much time in the room with him, and we'd both pretend as if the other didn't exist. I ended up spending a lot more time in my friend's room to avoid being around him. Naturally, this meant I had no access to the net connection in our room, and I was having to spend money to go to the nearby cyber cafe or ask another one of my friends to work on his computer. I put up with it for a while, thinking my friend would come around, and he never did, so I was getting increasingly pissed off. So I did the only thing I could. The router was set up in the corridor where they split it off to a connection to each room, and whenever I was out, I'd unplug the wire to our room. It felt a lot better knowing he couldn't be online when I was browsing elsewhere, and I'd plug it back in when I returned and he couldn't figure out why it wasn't working, and I kept it up for the whole year. We moved next year to single room dorms and each got an independent connection, but I still grin at having bugged him for that year. Alright, listen, I understand the need for revenge, but my goodness, dude, turning off his internet for hours at a time? This would be rage-inducing to me. This is like the pettiest of all revenge. Imagine your internet's just out every time your roommate leaves and you can't figure it out. You've unplugged the connection 80 times, you've called networking, they have no clue what's going on. You're just stuck without internet. For some reason, it only works when the person is in the room. I'd start to think they were magic. What in the Harry Potter is going on right now? That's good. I hid from my boss. Hide and seek, baby. So this story took place at my first job at the Shining Golden Arches. I had a boss that was roughly 4 feet tall and acted like everyone was stupid except for her. Her and I didn't get along, but since I got along with the other supervisors, it didn't really bug me that much. Until she started pulling this stunt where she would ask me to stay past my 8-hour shift to get overtime. Overtime pay only gets applied if you work 30 minutes or more past an 8-hour shift. That tiny, bitter princess would force me to clock out 25 to 28 minutes after, squeezing as much time out of me as she could without actually paying me for it. Supervisors sometimes got in trouble if they gave out too much overtime, so I could understand her trying to get help at the end of the night without getting in trouble. But then I realized she wasn't doing this to anyone else, just me. This made it personal. Coupled with the fact she always had the worst attitude with me, it was clear she was doing this to spite me. She was sweet with other people, but always had a bitter attitude towards me and had me do the worst jobs and even forgot about my breaks from time to time and never apologized for any of it. I decided I was gonna push back. At first, I tried to be civil and ask her why I needed to clock out at that very second, and when she explained she could get in trouble if I stayed too long, I asked why she let other people stay, to which she told me to stop talking back to her and clock out. She used her power as a supervisor to threaten an insubordination claim, and if she was gonna play dirty, then so was I. You see, fellow people of the internet, I might have been taller and heavier than my manager, but I could compact myself. I specialized in cleaning during closing time and would bend and squeeze my body into the tightest of spaces to get the stains my OCD mind wouldn't let me leave behind. When my supervisor asked me to stay when it was time to clock out, I decided to enact my revenge. Very simply, I squeezed into a space that she would not be able to find me underneath one of the machines, and there was a lot of grime back there, so I spent half an hour hiding from my pint-sized supervisor. I remember her calling my name, but I pretended not to hear and kept scrubbing away. At 31 minutes past my 8-hour shift, I revealed myself and stepped out from underneath the machine, and my supervisor immediately saw and ran up to berate me from a foot below my eye level. How dare I clean out of her sight? She was gonna get in trouble because she handed out too much overtime, blah blah blah. I feigned ignorance and let her rant while I watched the clock tick up an extra 5 minutes. Eventually, her chihuahua tantrum calmed down and she told me to clock out with a look of defeat. She never asked me to stay over my scheduled time ever again and avoided talking to me until the day I was due my final paycheck, and she was obligated to tell me it was ready since she was the only supervisor on shift, and I never saw her again after that. What's up with really short people and being angry, you know? I'm talking like people in the 4'1" to like 4'8" category just always seem mad. Like Napoleon Bonaparte. What was that guy's issue, huh? All jokes aside, it sounds like she just kind of had beef with you, but yeah, I'd be pissed if I had to stay an extra 30 minutes over 8 hours and didn't get any overtime by like 2 minutes. I understand the need to hide. It does kind of freak me out that underneath the machine was so dirty it took you 30 minutes to clean though. Yeah, I'll take your shift. This was years ago. I was 16 working my first job at a pizza shop that had a whole thing based off of hot and ready pizzas. You know, that one. And this was hands down the worst job I've ever had. Between the crappy customers, God forbid they have to wait 5 minutes for pizza at 6 p.m. on a Friday because we sold out of all the ready ones, the even worse staff, which, by the way, we were also understaffed. We had 12 people total and needed 4 or 5 people per shift with 2 or 3 shifts per day, and the lack of a management system, it was awful, and I only worked there for 3 months. In short, I was never bullied in school, but I was bullied by my coworkers at this job. I don't know if it's because I was the youngest and they were all 18 to 24, and I'm not sure, but it's not my problem. They were all terrible to me, such as putting their tasks on me because they didn't want to do it, and I basically ran the shop at one point, leaving me to carry the heavy boxes of dough from the basement while they carried toppings, forcing me to deal with the most difficult customers. They often referred to me as management, despite me being the youngest and not being a manager, and blame me for not doing tasks when the district manager would come into the store. Our store manager quit, got fired, I don't know, like a month in, and they never replaced her. After 3 months of a toxic workplace and working every holiday from Halloween to New Year's and my entire winter break, I put in my 2 weeks. I realized I was 16 and way too young to be miserable at my job, so the schedule comes out and the one guy who was especially nasty to me realized I wasn't on the following week. He was like, "Damn, they really cut your hours." And I said, "Nope, I put in my 2 weeks." And he smiles so big and then immediately tries to hide it. I then hear him go into the back and high-five the other cook after telling him that I quit. Maybe an hour later, he gets a text and realizes he was supposed to go to a family event or something on Saturday, but he has to work all day. Again, we don't have a store manager, so the rule of thumb to get coverage was just to ask the person and write their name on top of yours on the schedule in the office. No one's covering his shift because everyone's busy, so I offered to. I tell him I need an extra bit of money anyways, even though I wasn't supposed to work that week, and my next job doesn't start till the week after. And he's so excited. And then the day comes and I just don't go. I don't know what happened, and I don't care who I effed over in the store. I don't care if he got in trouble. I just left it at that. After what that place put me through for 3 months, it was the least I could do for peace of mind. I don't even know how the store was managing to run itself if, like, the 16-year-old was considered the manager whenever there was a problem. No offense, it just shouldn't be somebody that's only had a job for 3 months' duty to, like, be responsible for the entire store. I don't blame you for quitting. For anybody out there, if you're 16 and your job sucks and is, like, ruining your life, just quit. You're only 16. There's plenty of jobs out there. And, you know, as much as it would suck to be short-staffed, if they're going to be high-fiving each other because you're quitting and bullying you, I understand why you did what you did. I quit my first job with no notice, so whatever. I guess we both suck. I stopped my ex-boss from getting a promotion. So I had worked really hard to get a job I loved and I was great at and paid decent. My team loved me and everything was going great. I made the stupid decision to change departments. It was the same job, but this department paid 5% more, and I went to my first meeting in the new job and knew I made a mistake. The operations manager made someone cry, and there were only 5 of us in the meeting, and he was picking on a junior manager who had made a small mistake on the wording in a presentation he was doing. The rest of the team were great, and while I was there, I was the lead for a big project that lasted 2 years. I managed everything and was the go-to person, and on the final meeting with the director, my boss took over and took credit for all my hard work. So I left the department and started to work somewhere else in the same company. And about 6 months later, my boss rings me in a panic and explains he has a big interview but can't find the project pack, and I say I'll send it across. I dig out the pack but put in a roles and responsibility page before I send it across, and I had my name as lead on pretty much everything. I get a call later from an old coworker who said the boss had gone to his interview, explained he ran the project, did X, Y, and Z, and then went through the whole pack which had his responsibilities, and he looked like an idiot, which rattled him and impacted the rest of his interview, and the boss was fuming, but my coworker had backed me up. The boss didn't end up getting the promotion, and I like to think that I played a small part in that. I don't understand why he wouldn't look over what you had sent him before. Like, listen, obviously he's an idiot, he should have just done the work. It's never okay to take credit for work you didn't do, right? That being said, you think he would have been a little bit smarter before his giant interview and looked over the packet to remind himself what had gone on? Nah, just went guns blazing into the meeting with someone else's name on the project. Absolute moron. They probably didn't promote him because of that, but they also shouldn't have, because clearly he's not thinking things through too well. Ask us to tone it down? Okay, I'll clap even harder. I went to my mom's graduation yesterday, and it was a large ceremony with all of the graduate students receiving degrees across the university. It was held in the basketball stadium with lots of people, and it was really loud. I was in a group with 4 people, 2 of them being my siblings, and before the ceremony formally began, we were talking like normal people about mom and her degree. I don't think we were particularly loud, and anyways, the whole stadium was loud because the graduates hadn't entered and they hadn't played the anthem. This older woman in the row in front of us turns around and says to my brother in a really rude tone, "Can you tone it down, please?" My brother, who is a really gentle guy and very unobtrusive, who had just been talking about how happy he was for his mom to get her PhD, looked super embarrassed, and my older sister was indignant. I, the middle child, was petty, and if you tell my baby brother to shut up when your whole group is still talking, oh hell no, I'm not cool with that. Do you know how many times you clap at one of these things? Probably close to 50 times. I normally don't clap very hard as I have arthritis in my hands, and clapping makes it super hard or makes it hurt, tingle, etc. So I typically do the white lady tennis clap. I was right behind this woman in the tiny stadium seating, and every time it came for applause, I clapped so hard, hands cupped, arms chicken wing pumping, really loud old man encore please, best damn joke I've ever heard in my life claps right behind her head. I made sure I didn't clap the longest, but almost. After the first few, my hands started to tingle and ache, but my mama didn't raise a quitter. I think halfway through the ceremony, she realized what was happening, and she talked to the person next to her and gestured towards me. So I stopped for about 10 minutes, letting some thunderous applause go by with only a few polite claps, only to start up again even harder. And you bet when my mom was on stage, I was screaming and hooting and hollering. Are my hands sore today? Yeah, but if I knew where the lady lived, I'd go clap outside of her bedroom window. I just don't understand why people go to stadiums if they hate noise so much. The fact that people are talking behind me in a stadium, yeah, there's like 8,000 people here, so get used to it. There's gonna be a lot of noise. I will say, going through the pain, that's next level. This is what I call a pro gamer move when you're willing to give yourself further arthritis for the cause. Congrats on the PhD, Dr. Mom. Now that you got your doctorate, can you work on a cure for arthritis? Cause my hand's about to fall off after your graduation. About 5 years ago, my company brought in an individual to see if my position was no longer needed, and I passed with flying colors. Not to give too much info away, but I was hired at an organization as a job title of basically helper, and for someone who was supposed to just be helping, I had a ridiculous amount of work. Almost all of my coworkers were huge technologically illiterate boomers, so I actually sort of thrived as a very useful person. For example, one guy would spend half of his day copying items and pasting them into another program we use. But he didn't even use Control-C, Control-V. He would just right-click, then copy, then go into the Files menu or something and insert copied item from clipboard. He was so proud of himself when he showed me because, don't worry, you won't have to retype everything. I wrote a program to do this automatically, but did not tell him, so I would just run it occasionally as part of my responsibilities. Anyways, I did a lot of stuff like this, and I'd estimate I'd save 15 hours of work every day on top of the 8.5 I did too. Then insert Sergeant Douchebag. This wasn't the military, I just like to call him. We're having a great team meeting when he shows up. White hair, combed okay-ish, a scrunched face, glasses, and he just sort of showed up one day and took notes during our morning meeting. At one point, someone brought up a name of one of the customers, and I said, "Oh, is that the 300-pound guy with the big beard?" Sort of as a joke, I mostly do back-end stuff, and there was a guy like this I recently did some entrance stuff for. But I was wrong, and my boss said, "No, it's blah blah blah, some other person, okay," and then we talked about the person a little bit. Fast forward about a week, and this Sergeant Douchebag is a complete douchebag to me. I don't know why. He will ignore me during group conversations and literally scoff at me. Who actually scoffs at people? I was having a really rough week looking for some extremely important files, and people were yelling all day, and I was exasperated. There was too much to do, and I was having anxiety attacks at home in the middle of the night, but it was Friday, so I was pulling through. As I looked for this file, I ended up deep on our file structure, and the search returned a personal folder structure with one of the drives. I clicked out of curiosity, and it was Sergeant Douchebag's notes. I opened it up, and it was a whole section about me, and this guy basically goes from location to location, getting people fired to save the CEO money. And he was working on me now. I scrolled through his notes, and at the very top I saw, Frosty thought a 4'10", 24-year-old female patient was a 300-pound bearded man, clearly atrocious attention to detail. That's just one example of how completely messed up his comments were. So, in combination with my job, which I generally liked and enjoyed helping people, knowing I wasn't getting paid enough for my effort, the horrible week I had, and his comments, I said, F this. I set up 3 email configurations. The first one was letting my boss know that I'll be taking 2 weeks of vacation time to be sent at 10 p.m. tonight. To the company, letting them know I will not be present for 2 weeks, so whatever work they currently need me to do, they will need to do themselves, to send Monday morning at 4 a.m. For any emails that came in, I sent an auto response that said I'll be out for an unknown amount of time. For any routine, emergency, or even occasional items, it's imperative you reach out to Sergeant Douchebag at XXX for assistance. Then, I turned off every automated task I ever set up. Then, I swung by its temporary office and said, I think I found a way to make your job easier. He didn't even really turn his head to look at me, but raised one eyebrow, and then I left. I actually got multiple calls on Monday morning I didn't answer. It didn't last long, apparently, but I stayed strong and didn't respond to anything. On Wednesday, I had a little anxiety about it, but I stayed as strong as I could, and I thought about the tasks that needed a 2-day turnaround. There was no way some of the guys were keeping up with their normal duties. Guaranteed at least 2 people were no longer doing their normal jobs just to keep up with the automated tasks. I got a long email to my personal account, I guess for my resume or whatever, from my boss on Thursday night of the first week, and it went something like this. Frosty, I know you're a smart person and probably figured out what the company had us doing, and I would say it's very important you call me, but that probably isn't gonna work, I see. I've talked with Sergeant Douchebag's boss, and he will be leaving our location, and I explained our progress meetings seem to be going in the wrong direction and that you're one of the most valuable employees here. I'm sure you're looking at other jobs at this point, or maybe you've even started one. I hope not. If you could please reach back to me, I'd like to offer you a raise. It has become very apparent how useful you are around here, and I hear about it every day, believe me. So I came back on Monday with a $10,000 raise and Sergeant Douchebag out of my face, and my boss apologized again in person and said he didn't get a say in it. I think it's a little weird he could have had a say after I left, but not before, but I sorta get it. Look, what probably happened is this dude didn't have a say, and then the CEO found out that, productivity was cut in half by 67% and said, I don't care what you have to do, you get him back to work. A $10,000 raise, though, I guess Sergeant Douchebag's normal job of saving people money wasn't that effective this time. His consulting experience list cost company $10,000 more a year on average. Dang it, we really need to raise our costs around here. Get him in here stat. I'm telling you, this is one of the jobs I would love to find because it's just like you have all the power. They can't even copy and paste stuff on their computer. They need you. You should have asked for 20 grand. What are they gonna do? Say no? Hold up the elevator on each floor? Enjoy stopping unnecessarily on a bunch of floors on your way down. So yesterday I was returning home with a heavy bag of groceries, and as I approached my apartment building, I saw a delivery man with a parcel trolley waiting at the door, and I decided to open it for him so he could get in while I checked the mailbox. As I entered the building, I heard him get on the elevator, and he must have heard me enter the building as well, but he didn't bother to hold the lift. No big deal, I'll just wait for it to come back down. The elevator stopped on the 4th floor, and I noticed it stayed on the 4th floor for a lot longer than it normally should, almost like it was stuck. At that moment, it started moving, except instead of going down to me, it was going up and stopped at the 5th floor for an unusually long time. It was at this point I realized the courier must have been holding up the elevator doors with his trolley so they couldn't close, meaning the elevator won't move. Annoyed because I have a heavy bag of shopping and live on the 7th floor and we only have one elevator, I was even more incensed when I saw the elevator carry on going up further and holding up at other floors. And at this point I'd been waiting a good couple minutes, so I decided to take the stairs. However, I ran as fast as I could. Why? Because the elevator was coming down from the 16th floor, and on my way to the 7th floor I pressed for the elevator on each floor I passed. If he enjoyed holding up the lift, he could spend extra time in them on the way down. I waited in the stairwell and listened to the elevator doors on my floor. Door open, door close. Stop at the 6th, and so on. When it hit the 5th, I could just about hear the courier say, "For F's sake," as he realized no one's getting on the elevator. I was out of breath and had a good sweat going on, but it was worth it in the name of pettiness. Alright, normally I'm on the delivery driver's side, but in this case, I think he went to douchebag school. It's pretty rude to hold up the elevator on every floor, especially if you know the person that just let you into the building is coming to get on. Oh, man. I will say good petty revenge and a solid workout. Get that cardio in, get in shape. You never know when you're going to have to run up 7 flights of stairs with groceries. But on that note, I think that's going to do it for the video, guys. Hopefully you enjoyed. If you did, I would really appreciate you taking a second to press the like button. Let me know in the comment section down below what you thought. And of course, subscribe if you're new. If you want to be a real legend, there is a playlist in the description to the rest of the Reddit videos. So if you need something to listen to while you're gaming, doing homework, or whatever, feel free to check out that playlist. I would appreciate it. But yeah, on that note, don't get anyone pregnant. If you do, make sure they're hot, and I'll see you guys next time. I'm out. Peace.